Hello and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. We are continuing our IVA career mode series. As you can see, we are building a probe called Moon 1, which is going to be taking us to the moon. We're not starting manned launches yet. We are still recovering from the loss of our pilot Jebediah due to stupidity and not reading the instruction manual. Yay. But anyway, back to the moon probe. We have a thermometer, we have a gravioli detector, we have a magnetometer. I put two of them on because I want the center of mass to be about right, though I'm sure we could have done with just one. And I stick the camera on top and the antenna on the side, and everything looks good. So, it's now time to stick this on top of a rocket. We stick it in a fairing to make sure it's aerodynamic and FAR doesn't make us, or Ferram Aerospace doesn't make us explode. And I start building rocket, but then I remember that in the last episode I created the IVA 4 launch system, which put 2 satellites into orbit. So it's a reliable, proven system, and I'm going to use it for Moon 1, which is a little bit heavier than its tested payload weight, but also that payload does carry fuel of its own, more fuel than it needs for its mission, so I'm not really that worried. And we have liftoff, and it starts shaking like crazy. Yes, the nice shaky IVA 4 rocket. It stops shaking when those first tanks go out, if you look in vessel view. Actually, I think those are second tanks. I have little tiny tanks just for a little bit of extra fuel I needed. But we're burning with the second stage engine, which is nice low thrust but high ISP. As you can see, our periaps is rising, almost out of the surface. And then we start pointing down because our apoapsis is going a little bit high, and we end up in this nice wonky orbit that's all crooked. But it's in space and it's in orbit technically. And I decide to take us to the moon, and it just so happens that that maneuver is near the periaps, which means it's more efficient. I'm sure you can hear my dog barking. But yes, like I was saying, it's more efficient to burn lower to the planet because Oberth effect. Yes, you get more. It's basically a gravity assist while you're doing the burn and something like that. I don't know. I haven't really studied it. I just know it's a thing. But we can see there in our camera, nice picture of the moon. Go ahead and zoom in with our camera. And now it's time to fly all the way there for real. And I realize a problem about here is I am basically out of electric charge. So I try taking science, none of it's worth anything. So I see if I can make it into the orbit of the moon, and no, my spacecraft dies. So there is 2 ways to fix this problem. One, I can cover it in batteries, which will make it weigh twice as much as it needs to. Or 2, I can put it into hibernation. And I'm basically going to do both. Hibernation, if you don't know, you can actually right-click on all of the parts, all of the electric charge using and storing parts in KSP, and turn them off. Basically, stopping the use of power. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm actually setting it up here with an action group, so I can try to do it in IVA mode. It actually turns out to turn it back on, you can't do it in IVA mode. You have to actually manually turn on one battery, then use the action group, and then turn on that battery again because it's been switched off by the action group. Now, you could say that's kind of cheating, but well, it doesn't have a mechanic which allows me to time the hibernation, which it should. So I'm going to go ahead and cheat. But anyway, we are launching Moon 2. Nice shaky. It's unfortunately put us on quite the inclined orbit. Oh yes, that is not good. But I'm going to try for it anyway. Point towards our maneuver node, start burning with that second stage engine. We know we are going to make it into orbit. Or I guess I've had the extra weight of those batteries, and they are pretty heavy. But I'm sure I'll make it. I have plenty of extra fuel. Alright, we're coming up on the burnout. Our orbit looks better. I go ahead and warp to apoapsis before finishing, and I actually end up finishing with the moon probe, but that doesn't really matter. Now I am short on fuel here, so I decide to do a maneuver node at the most efficient point and just set it up, reducing as much as I can how much fuel I'm burning. Unfortunately, when you adjust it after, you can set the maneuver node multiple orbits ahead, but when you adjust it, for some reason it resets that multiple orbit thing. So yeah, and I start time warping, and then my my game crashes actually, and then I realize that I can go ahead and launch another mission that's not on such an inclined orbit. Here I'm going back to it after the crash, and then I realize I can launch a new mission. So I go ahead and get out Moon 2, take some of the batteries off just to save on weight because I've proved the hibernation theory. And now it's time to launch Moon 3. And we're just going to try to fly it better and keep it from being inclined. And as you can see there, we turn over right away. That's basically to make it so when we start wobbling, we actually start wobbling in the right direction and it doesn't incline us as much. And as you can see, we are much closer to the 90-degree line. It worked. And as you can, it is unfortunately a little bit inclined, as you can see there, but it's not as bad, and that's good. You can see 3 planets there. I know one of them's Eve. I didn't get a good look at the other ones. I'm sure it's like Dres and Duna. I didn't think it was a green one. But anyway, we are circularizing our orbit, as you can see in the map, and here we go. We are circularized, and now it's time to go to the moon. Again, trying to get an efficient maneuver that gets us close. Now, because it's inclined, I am going to have to do a mid-course adjustment. That or I can just deal with an ugly orbit. So we go ahead, start extending out. We actually get to use the second stage. Much more efficient flight path this time. We just ejected it there and started using the probe. And we have an intersect. I just get it somewhat close, and then around the ascending node, I do a incline adjustment, which is basically the ascending node's the most efficient place to do that because it's when you're no longer inclined relative to the target. Actually, it's the only way to effectively do that is right at the ascending node or descending node, because that's when your planes are intersecting. But anyway, we get to the moon somewhat inclined, but it's actually much better than I was afraid it might be. And we bring it out of hibernation, waking it up. We go ahead and point retrograde, and we start decelerating, and there we go. We have a nice round orbit, taking pictures of the Earth, Kerbal, and it also had Minmus behind it, I think. And hey, look, we can see this beautiful moon. This is what we've actually come for. And right now I'm just trying to get the science experiments to work. I can't transmit the goo, or actually I can't transmit any of them because I'm too far away, but I can't transmit the goo at all, which kind of sucks. But I go ahead and get low to get some low altitude data. As you can see here, we're doing all our experiments and they all have nice data that we can retrieve about the characteristics of the moon. I could have done that better. I could have dropped my orbit down so periapsis was facing Kerbal, which would have made this return more effective because of the Oberth effect, which we talked about earlier. But anyway, we do get close. It's within our fuel margins. Here we are, coming up to Kerbal, and we go ahead and transmit all our data. You might notice we are actually completely out of fuel now. So yeah, that was barely within our fuel margins, but it still was within them. Surprisingly, Moon 2 was a very inefficient flight because, well, it hardly has enough to get out to the moon. But we look at all this, we need the capsule, but we also need aerodynamics because that's how we get a heat shield. And here we are going to Moon 2, which is overdue for its burn. And I also notice here pretty quick that if I look at my actual delta V, I don't have enough to make it to the moon. On paper, it's just impossible. There's really no way to get there. So I deorbit it. As you can see here, we are going through the atmosphere, hitting the air. It's nice, glowing. Some things are blowing up. Not that much, actually. And what happened there is I had it on easy mode. Deadly Reentry I had on easy mode. Because in the early episodes when my rockets kept exploding, I thought that it was overpowered. But no, it turns out that now it's underpowered. So I've set it back to normal there so that, you know, it's actually somewhat of a challenge and it doesn't just burn off like one small part when you re-enter. And I go ahead and look at some contracts. Actually, that's an accepted contract I have about going to the moon and surveying it. And it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to get data because I would have to recover the probe to get the goo canister. But I am going to try to get a gravioli scan because that was failing last time I was up there. So we go ahead and launch Moon 4. We're going much more efficient this time, much lower orbit, which is a good thing actually. Because again, the Oberth effect. Yes, the Oberth effect is your friend for efficiency, which usually I don't use in Kerbal Space Program. I usually brute force things like you would not believe, but this series has taught me a lot about about being efficient. So I go ahead, put it in hibernation mode. There we go, and I restart it, and go ahead. Oh wait, no, that was just putting in hibernation mode. For some reason, the action group wasn't working. I think I replaced the batteries so they were no longer under the influence. And I go ahead and restart it. I think I only turn on one battery just because, you don't need that much power. And there we go. We've burned through that second stage. And we have an intersect. There we go. Just making sure we don't hit the surface. And now it's time to go get ourselves a gravioli scan. So we're coming in much lower this time. Actually, not that much lower. Slightly lower. I don't know if it's a low orbit, though. I think low orbit's pretty close on the moon. But anyway, we decelerate. We make it nice and circular. And get some nice pictures of that massive crater on the Kerbal-facing side of the moon. Everybody knows that crater. It is so nice, and it's kind of nice to have pictures of it up close. But we can't get our gravioli scan again, so I basically plot a return course, and we go back to Kerbal. Defeated. Somewhat. I end up actually hacking and giving myself the science because I think it is total BS that the gravioli scan did not work. And here I decided to see if I can actually circularize, and I don't think I had the delta V for it, so I just stick it in retrograde, slow down as much as I can, and then I transmit all of my nice data back to the surface. There is the moon set. Ooh, look at all these beautiful pictures of Kerbal. And it looks like we're getting a little bit low on electric charge. No, only about halfway. But anyway, that's it for this episode. I'm Con Hathy. Bye.